It's a good day to talk hoops. Today I'm joined by the head coach of the University School in Milwaukee, Andy Fitzgerald. Thanks for joining. How are things up there?
Thanks for having me. Certainly appreciate it. Any opportunity to talk basketball, appreciate what you're doing, sharing the game. Things are good. We had a big win last night over conference rivals, so we're feeling good right now. We're kind of still alive in the conference picture. So, today's a good day, and hopefully we can kind of keep carrying momentum throughout the rest of the season.
That's awesome, Andy. And we're hitting that home stretch of the season. So as we're rounding third base, heading home, how are you feeling about playoffs coming up? Maybe some things you're looking at in the schedule. What are some things that you're focused on as we're heading towards that home base?
Yeah, like you said, home stretch here. So we play 11 games in a span of 27 days coming up. We play Friday, and then from there, that's where that stretch starts. So for us, it's staying healthy, staying fresh, finding different ways to bring energy. That's a big part of things. So I mean, I told our team we don't have a lot of true practices left anymore. We kind of have to be who we are at this point, just fine tune and be the best we can be each given night. But we're really excited. I think we're a team that's definitely capable. We've had some really high highs this year and a couple low lows, but I tell our guys all the time, we're capable of beating anybody, especially at our level. So if we put it all together, we can make a nice little run. It's just a matter of staying focused and attention to detail and everything that we kind of harp on every single day.
Absolutely. And it's always jarring for the seniors when you hit February to read a practice number and say, this is how many practices you have left, guaranteed. And that's a really unsettling thing for seniors as they're realizing their time's limited. And you talked about getting rest and being fresh. What are things you're doing to do that?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. We have 10 seniors, so we're making this season the best experience we can. Those guys have been tremendous. This is my third year with most of them. So some things we're doing, some obvious things are just shortening practice time as you go. So we don't play till Friday, like I said. So we took today off. We are away from the gym. Go home after school, get your schoolwork done, stay hydrated. Sickness is obviously going around this time of year. I
Yeah.
know it's hit many programs hard, and we're not. We have the same thing going on. So I think that's one way to do it. We change things up in practice at times. We like to one day I'll just kind of let my assistants take a larger role, hear a different voice, let the players have more input on a certain day. Anything to keep it fresh because, like you said, it is a long season. It's a grind, especially during these winter months, and it's been cold outside, and school is definitely picking up for these boys as well. So anything just to keep the energy high in the gym and keep them fresh, get them in, get them out, keep them, um, you know, in good shape, conditionally and everything like that, but also make sure we're giving them enough time to rest and kind of recuperate and rejuvenate and get excited for the next day as well.
Andy, I've heard from people that sickness is the worst it's been in a long time this winter. And I know from like my kids in school, there's pneumonia going around, which is a wild thing to happen because I don't remember pneumonia going around. I remember it being the cold and flu and things like that.
Right.
So are you training and preparing your bench more than usual, or is it status quo, next man up all the time, no matter what?
Yeah, I would say a little bit of both. And yeah, I think it has been probably the hardest season from a flu sickness standpoint, probably since COVID. We had norovirus early, we had different things. We've had multiple kids out for weeks at a time. We have one of our players out right now that I haven't seen in probably 10 days.
Wow.
So it's just tough. He's a rotation player, so it's kind of a little bit of a next man up mentality, but yeah, it's preparing everybody. But luckily, we're a pretty deep team. Like I said, we have 10 seniors and a couple of really talented underclassmen. So, we play varsity reserve games this year. We've tried to maximize our preseason with scrimmages and some preseason tournaments, and all in preparation for being everybody prepared and ready to go for the season for whatever we're faced. And that tends to happen every year, whether it's injuries or sickness, and you can't let that be an excuse. You just have to push through and go with what you have, and always put your best foot forward.
Can you go through your career experience for guys listening that don't know about you? Because you've done a lot of really awesome stuff and you have a unique journey. So, would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, I certainly can. Like you said, a little unique, probably a little different from most. So, I grew up playing four sports in high school. Knew I wanted to coach basketball. So, even though I would say basketball is probably my second or third best sport, I knew I wanted to play that in college to get essentially into coaching. So, I went to UW Parkside Division II, played there. Very average player, no problem saying that. But it was a great experience. Division II basketball is extremely high level. So it was great. It was a great experience. I played for a coach named Luke Riegel, who was kind of a Bo Ryan disciple. So being exposed to really good defense, a
Mm.
good motion, and ball movement on offense, I think really helped my coaching as well. But knew I wanted to get into coaching. So grad school was an option for me. I went down to Florida State and got involved with the team there. Luckily, it was one of the better seasons they've ever had.
Wow.
Beat Duke twice that year, beat Carolina twice that year, won the ACC tournament, won a game in the NCAA tournament. Just a ton of fun. So kind of got to see the business side of things more on the operations side. Camps, paperwork, all the logistics, planning, the stuff that kind of goes unseen, but is a huge part of coaching, especially at the smaller college level. So that really helped prepare me for, booking hotels and buses and meals. It's amazing how many meals and changes that kids have. I need this on my sub. So that helped prepare me for that. And from there, I was able to kind of really get into coaching, so to speak. Landed an assistant coaching job up at Edgewood College, Division III school in Madison, Wisconsin, in the NAC conference. Love the Division III level, just pure basketball. Guys that love the sport they're there because they want to be a part of a team and just want to keep playing the game. Really good experience as well. The head coach, Justin Meyer, that was when he took over the program. So it was really neat and good experience to kind of see it from scratch, kind of get the program running, even though they were in a really good spot, but, see how the recruiting was going and the scouting and kind of be a part of getting him going as well, supporting him in whatever role I can. And it was really fun to dive in with the players as well. From there, I got my MBA at night. So it was kind of once I graduated with that, it was kind of a natural progression, I thought, to look for something else. So I actually went back to UW Parkside, called up my head coach and said, "Hey, I'm looking, do you know of anything?" He's like, "Andy, why don't you just come join my staff? There's a teaching job here at Parkside." I was like, "Well, I've never taught before, but, I'm open to it." Luckily, it worked out. It was great. It's one of those things I tell people, like, it got me out of my comfort zone. Great experience teaching. I was 24 years old at the time. I was teaching people older than me. I was teaching students that I actually found out were like in classes with me when I was a student there. So it was a very unique experience. They're like, "Oh, I thought I saw you at the bar one night," and I was like, "Oh no, this is going to be interesting." But it went really well. And on the basketball side of things, it was really cool to see. I'd been in the program for 4 years as a player, but now seeing it from the coaching perspective, it's just totally different. How much work those coaches put in, the utmost respect for the work that Luke Riegel does. And we had the best 2 years while I was there, and I think I played a very small part in that. But recruiting was really good. We tapped into Illinois, brought in a ton of talented players. We were number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, top 10 in the country. Just super fun and same type of stuff. Dived into recruiting, scouting quite a bit. Just awesome high level basketball. There's so many good players at Division II level.
Yeah.
Whether they come down from D1, have that dream, but they're just super talented. Excellent level. From there, spent 1 year at Lake Forest College. Kind of had a talk with Coach Riegel at the time. It's probably best, for you to seek another experience. I think you probably maximize what you've done here. Just because I wasn't the full-time coach there, I was teaching
Yeah.
for the most part and kind of, doing the most I could coaching wise. So went to Lake Forest College, did that for a year. Again, another Division III school down in Illinois. Tremendous experience. Ken Davis is an amazing coach. Then his son took over after that. From there, got to the junior college level, which I had recruited junior college, but never really thought I would coach at that level. So I was able to get a job at Bryan and Stratton College, which is in Wauwatosa here in Wisconsin. It was their second year as a program. So that was another unique experience. And that's where I coached with Brian Rickert, previous guest of yours.
Yep.
Just a good basketball mind, good person. It was a really unique experience. Bringing in 35 guys, we had a JV team. That's where I was kind of exposed to, the mentorship side, making sure guys are going to class and being that role model for them and helping them in ways really beyond the basketball court, which I thought was really fulfilling. Luckily, after 2 years there, I was able to land my first college head coaching job down at the College of Lake County, the same level junior college. First year there, we took a team that had won 9 games prior. We won 20, ranked top 20 in the country, had it rolling. We did not win a postseason game, but I felt like we were really about to take that next step. Recruited probably the best class that school has ever seen. We had tons of talent and I had great assistants that helped with that. And unfortunately, that's when COVID hit. So that hit CLC, Lake County, very hard. Illinois, as a state, took it very seriously, and that county in particular. So we completely shut down. We couldn't do anything. So these kids were kind of in limbo. It was just a very difficult situation. Even the following year, so we missed that whole season. The following year, we were still being told we couldn't really recruit, at least out, at events and things like that. Wasn't a guarantee that we were even going to play that next year. So I felt at the time I just had my first child, on the personal side. I just felt it wasn't really feasible to continue there as much as I wanted to. I thought we could really build something there. Did the best I could to get the guys, in good spots. And a lot of our guys are still doing really good things. Jamel Jones is out in California, one of the top players scoring wise in Division One. He was with us. We got D2 All-Americans. So still follow those guys, keep in touch with them. Missed it dearly, but just felt from a personal and professional side, needed to move on. So difficult decision, but ended up at UW Milwaukee for a year under Pat Baldwin as a special assistant coach, where I worked heavily in advanced scouting, analytics, special projects, really anything that they had for me. Happy to dive into all of that. Analytics was definitely the biggest area. Fortunately, I was only there for about 7 months before the staff was unfortunately let go.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another kind of quick experience, but it was very fun to be back at Division One level. We had Patrick Baldwin, who's now playing in the NBA. So just kind of being around NBA scouts and the media buzz that we had, even though it didn't necessarily go as planned, was really a fun experience. So from there, I bounced around a little bit. Child was, kind of a thought. We have to settle down in terms of the family thing. So I was like, okay, where can I find some stability? So that's where I ended up at university school. We're an independent K through 12 Division III school here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was offered a job in the athletic department there, as well as the head basketball coach. So I jumped at that immediately. This is my third year now. I think we're a program on the rise. We're definitely improving year to year. We have tremendous kids. We're a high academic school. We send kids to Ivy Leagues, to top-notch schools. I think we had the second highest team GPA in the state last year, and we're trying to get the number one spot this year. But just great kids, and they work extremely hard, and they're really making a ton of progress on the basketball side of things as well. So I'm really enjoying it.
You got to juice your classes, man. Get them in foods, get them in parenting.
Well, that's the thing. So all my kids take AP classes. So I mean,
Man,
it boosts the scale a little bit because they weight it a little bit heavily, but
yeah.
they're not taking the cupcake classes, so they have to earn it.
That's an incredible journey, man. And I just learned a lot about you, and people that wonder where my guests come from. I find someone that's doing cool stuff with what they do in game planning and staff building, or what they put out on Twitter. I want them to share it with people, and I don't even know all their stories. So I'm learning with the listener, which is really cool. And for people that don't know, coaches that didn't go the college route, it is miserable being at the bottom of a totem pole in college. I remember waking up at 5 a.m., going to set up the film, set up the practice equipment. The players would come at 6. They'd practice. I'd pass for all the drills. They'd get to go shower into classes while I cleaned it all up for them. And then I had to go do my classes. And it was horrible. It was really good for me. It was horrible. And one experience I had that I'll never forget is I'm filming a game. This is UIS Division II basketball. So it's not Division I, but it's still fairly significant game level. And I'm filming up at the top of the bleachers, and I'm 20 years old. And after a timeout, I hit the stop after I think I already hit stop, right? So then when it starts again, I stopped it instead of start it. So I missed like 10 minutes of the game, and I'm sitting there, and I was freaking out, Andy. I was freaking out. So I had about 30 minutes to think about what I was going to say. Own your mistake. Be mature.
Yes.
No, Andy, I'm 20. I walked up to him and I said, the tech glitched out. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. And I'll never confess that. Now I am. But man, it is a tough job. So you went through all those grinding positions. You've been to sort of the top. You've been all over the place. What's the biggest overall differences between college levels and high school? Like, what are you noticing, small or big things?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like you said, college level, you really have to earn it on the coaching side of things, but such good experience. Differences, it probably depends a little bit where you coach. So in Wisconsin, there's some pretty major differences. I think the first one is just the time you have with your players. There's restrictions in college as well, but you're around those guys really year round, at least in some capacity. You're able to get in the gym quite a bit, do different things throughout the year. Here in Wisconsin, high school, we're extremely limited. And my kids, most part, play at least two, if not three sports. So, um, outside of our season, we try to give them space. We do open gyms. We definitely do summer league, and we get our 5 contact days. In some states, you get a little bit more, which I think most states should go to that model. I think the more time you can have with your players, the better. But I think that's the biggest thing. In college, we could have a 2-hour practice followed by a 30-minute film session and maybe still go lift or something like that. In high school, I have to get these kids out max 2 hours. Their parents are waiting. They have schoolwork. They have other things going on. So you have to be very efficient with your time. If you have film, you better, 15 minutes max or whatever your amount is, and better be very clear and succinct because, again, their attention spans aren't quite there. Managing a team, I think, is quite different at the high school level. You have a wide range of roster
Yeah.
members, I guess I would say. You have maybe 2 or 3 that are really trying to play at the college level, and then you have a couple more that are really serious about it, but basketball is maybe their second sport. You have guys that are there because they want to have fun. You have guys that are there because the social aspect, whatever it might be. So blending that all together, I think, is a big part of high school coaching. It's definitely part of college coaching as well, but for the most part, they're there. Basketball is a priority. They were recruited there, or at least, we're good enough to be a walk-on or whatever it might be. It's a big part of their life where they're able to dedicate more time to it and just the commitment is more expected. So that's a part of it. But outside of that, I mean, scheme wise, it probably depends on the level. I think, Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3, somewhere as well. Scouting is so high level that you really have to be on everything. I mean, I think Division 1 is so over scouted to a degree, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just so hard to just score
Hmm.
at the Division 1 level. I mean, with how many people are on staff and synergy and sports code and all this stuff, I mean, you can get 100 clips like that of a ball screen action. You know exactly what this team is going to do, and if the players aren't at the level of making different reads and decisions, it's just very hard to score. So you have to be really on top of things at those levels in terms of your preparation. Junior college, high school level, maybe a little bit more free flowing. There's still plenty of coaches that know exactly what the other team is doing. I mean, we played a high level game last night. Myself and our opposing coaching are we're screaming out every play and things like that, but high school players, they can only digest so much. So
Yeah.
I think you have to have kind of overall philosophy, more principles, concepts, and play out of that first. Just not to overwhelm your players at the high school level. But I mean, I tell you, every level has been so enjoyable. Coaching's just a blessing. Love working with kids and young adults, and it's such a great game, and the strategy behind it, and the team building, it's just phenomenal.
I want to dissect several of the things you just said, maybe one at a time for like 10 minutes or so. The
Yeah.
first thing is practice days in the summer. I was really surprised. I'm from Illinois, but I kind of forgot when I moved back to Illinois, the Springfield area, and I kind of help talk with coaches in this area. And one of the first things we talked about is, what are you doing this summer? Oh, we got 24 contact days. We're gonna split them up like 6, 4, whatever it is. And I was like, hold on, rewind. You get how
Right.
many contact days? We get what was it, 5?
5.
5? Yeah, we get
5 days.
5. And what are you going to do with 5 days, first of all? Like, that is crazy.
Yeah.
And second of all, it it doesn't, you can allow more days without it being a mandatory, but like, let's say 5 to 10% of your team can't come to each of the 5 days, that adds up. And if you had 20 days, you're still not expecting them to be at every single one. It's not mandatory,
Right.
but it's an option for the people who can't come. I don't know. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's a challenge. And then it's, how do you use those 5 days? And we play in a summer league. We do some of the WBY tournaments, 3 games in 3 days or whatever it might be. So, are you going to use your contact days to coach in those games, or do you want to use them, building up to those games where you kind of have more practice type, setting with your players so you're prepared more for those games? So we decided this last year that I would actually coach the summer league games. I don't know what we'll do this year. We'll be a little bit younger next year, so we might have to do, true contact days to lead up to that. So we're kind of better prepared, to be out on in the month of June. But yeah, I talk to coaches from other states and get a little frustrated because, like you said, Illinois. I know a lot of coaches in Illinois. I coach junior college there. I mean, the month of June is yours. I mean, you get 25 days essentially that you can use, 4 or 5 days a week, do what you need to do. And that's kind of really important, I feel, in building your program, building that continuity from season to season, especially if you have younger guys, newer players coming in. Um, to hit the ground running, I think that summer month is crucial, and 5 days isn't enough, in my opinion. And I know we were surveyed earlier this year if we should expand that, and I have no idea. I think sometimes in Wisconsin we see too many old school coaches. My opinion, not to criticize anybody, but I think it can only help. And again, we're not trying to overwhelm these kids. We're not going to keep them in the gym for hours upon hours. I think they want to be in the gym. They want to be coached. And as long as you're still following the rules and restrictions and limitations, it can only benefit everyone. So I would like to see that change. I think it would help everyone, all players, especially. It's that kind of that break in the AAU season as well to go get back and with your high school team and get coached up there, get ready for live periods and everything like that. So I think it would just benefit everybody.
Yeah, and then what ends up happening is then you have kids text you all throughout the day, all summer, "Hey, can I get in the gym and shoot?" And you have to like figure out who's monitoring, or can you just open the door and sit in the corner, and all
Right.
those things where it would just honestly be easier to just have a contact day, because then you're not spread thin all summer coming at 7 p.m., 6 a.m., 2 p.m. And here's the deal, Andy. I'm a voice of the coaches now. I'm a freedom fider. I'm out here
There you
podcasting on
go.
behalf of everyone.
I
I'm not
love it.
involved, so I can say whatever. I think it's a kind of a wussification culture of you don't want to require them too much, where you still want people to learn work ethic, and you're not requiring them, because the devil's advocate side of the other side would be we don't want our kids to be doing this all summer.
Right.
But at the same time, you should provide them options too if they want to. And that's a positive thing to capitalize on. If you had a kid say, "I want to work on algebra June and July," you wouldn't go, "No."
Right.
You need to be a kid, go to the beach. You'd be like, "That's amazing. Let's do that." But we have
Right.
kids who want to work on basketball in June and July, where it's like, well, if you do this, you do that, you don't do this, you don't do that, you might be able to work more on your game, where it's like, come on, just let us work a little bit.
Right. Well, then you just never know, who they're working with, and not to speak negatively about anybody, but it's
Yeah,
just, it helps build culture with your team to be around them in the summertime in that environment, as opposed to, in your actual season. Things are a little different in the summertime. You can build relationships. So I think it would just really benefit everybody uh, to expand that, especially in the month of June.
I agree. What are the biggest schematic differences, high school and college? In my opinion, it's probably way more actions, way more systems, different options, targeted attacks, but that's kind of a loose interpretation from what I remember from a long time ago. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. In high school, I think the biggest difference is most teams have two or three good options in terms of players. So I think most teams that are successful really gear towards those players, whether that's set plays, getting them the ball in certain situations, having a system that allows them to thrive, whether that's dribble drive, motion, swing, whatever you're trying to do. I think other things about the high school level, I think you see way more zone at the high school level. We play zone at times just because some teams we can't match up athletically. We're not quick enough foot speed wise. Maybe we're just a little bit small. We like to give ourselves a chance rebounding, things like that. So I think you see a lot of zone at the high school level, a lot of different zones, 1-3-1, 2-3. Last night we saw a 1-1-3 that kind of morphed into different things, and they were trying different things. So that's a part of it. I think at the high school level as well, you see a lot of pressing, trying to use athleticism, just trying to overwhelm teams essentially. Because again, you might have one or two capable ball handlers. So yeah, get the ball out of their hands, speed them up. Turnovers are definitely an issue at the high school level. So creating as many as you can makes complete sense to me. So pressing is a great way to do that. I think at the junior college level, I would say a lot of similarities actually. Obviously more talent, but again, you have those players for such a short time. JUCO, you're essentially a new team every year, especially the way things are now. So you can't go too complex, I think, at least in my opinion. You have to keep things pretty basic, give them a framework, give them a structure, allow them to kind of play within that with maybe a couple go-to sets or actions to create this and that. But, a lot of spread ball screen you see now at the college level, that's a big thing. So how are you going to guard that is usually a priority. How are you going to guard the post? That becomes a priority kind of at the Division III and Division II level. I think they still highly utilize post play because it can be an option for you. You get a good 6'6", 6'7" player at the Division III level. That's a great option for you. High school, same thing. As long as they're efficient in scoring, one of our best players is a post player. I'm not a huge fan of post play, but guess what? It's a high volume and percentage shot for us, so we're gonna get him the ball. I don't think we posted up hardly at all when I was a junior college coach. So just understanding your personnel, and I think as you go down level to level, it just simplifies a little bit. I think D1 and D2 have enough time with their teams. They can essentially do whatever they want in terms of this many plays. And every coach is different. Are they a set play type coach? Are they more free flowing? Whatever. But they can definitely get more detailed and run X amount of out of bounds plays. Where at high school level, if my team can remember 2 out of bounds plays, like I feel good about that. At least we have something we can change it up a little bit. So I guess that would be schematically some of the things
Yeah.
I see or think about. You obviously can't group every level or every team into one bucket, but from my experience, I think those are some of the main things that I've seen or at least experienced myself.
Right. And then that the epitome of that, Stan Hurley at UConn, they're running a set every single possession. And kids want to go, well, I think I could go play at X level. I don't know if you can. You have to be a freak athlete, but then you have to have a high level mind for the game as well. If a
Right.
coach is calling a 6 different action set every time down, you'd better be a lights out player or brilliant mind or both. In the high school level, we're really lucky if we can get in 5 to 6 good sets and probably pretty simple, right? And
Yep.
I think the scouting report is also way simpler. Would you agree with that versus college? You probably have a way more in-depth scouting report.
Yeah, absolutely. So, different coaches again probably have a different philosophy in scouting, but everywhere I have been as an assistant, we had very detailed scouting reports, 6, 7 pages, sometimes more. Some coaches would have like gold, silver, and bronze sets. Here's their gold sets where this is kind of what they live on. Silver, kind of their second tier, etc. They give all that to the players, and it's very detailed, and they're expected to know that. Coaches harp on scouting report stuff. When I was at UW Parkside, I mean, we would get a packet for every game. Myself, the other assistants, we would create these, and we lived on that scouting report. We had to have our scout team ready to go. We had to make sure our guys knew that information. So different ways to kind of quiz them throughout the week in preparation, the film, showing the clips of personnel and tendencies as well as the set. So very detailed. Myself, at the high school level, we do 1 page. That's it. I try to do 2 or 3 bullet points per player. Their main guys might get an additional bullet point or 2 because again, I think at the high school level, you're really, really reliant on your top players. So if you can focus on those couple guys, that's really important. And we'll give, if they run a number of sets, we might give them 1 or 2. Hey, if we can stop these 2, that gives us a chance. Here's what they're trying to do from an overall strategy. Dribble drive, they're really trying to get in the paint. So this game, we have to focus on, staying tight, staying in the gaps, not letting them get by us, contain the ball, whatever it might be. More overall themes. We definitely show a little bit of film, but again, you can't overwhelm them. I think high school kids overthink it. So I try to
Yeah.
find clips of where they actually score. Because if you show them an action and they don't score, they're like, oh, they might read into that. Oh, they're not very good. Because you're trying to show them a specific thing, but they might see something different. So I'm very intentional about what I do scouting wise with high school kids. Every clip I show is like a positive clip for the other team, just to
Yeah.
get them in the frame of mind of, okay, they were good, or, their press is good because here's them turning it over. Not, we're trying to show a certain thing of here's where they come to trap or whatever. Even if it leads to the other team scoring, that's, we're trying to show a specific thing. But I think in the high school kids' mind, that's important. But definitely, you just don't have the time as well at the high school level. So it's, 10-minute talk, maybe at most, show them a couple of clips and then do, some more follow up on the floor. And again, you don't want to overwhelm them. I think, paralysis by analysis
Yeah.
sometimes, or you don't want to bog them down. But I think at the same time, it gives you a competitive advantage if they can know some of the main things and take away some of those tendencies. I think that's huge at any level. And we definitely buy into that a little bit where we're at.
Yeah. I would say I thought that the coaches ought to be 110% bought into the scouting and chunk it up and relay it to the players in a very digestible way. We can't all be the Kettle Moraines who's doing a book report on the scouting. That's an amazing thing they're doing. You have to have kids that are obsessed with the game to do that.
Yes.
And not that our kids aren't great, it's just that they're not 1 through 15 obsessed with the game, and that's why
Right.
they're so successful. And
Right.
I thought for me, if we can get them to understand their best players, a few of their tendencies, who we're not running out on at the three, who we are running out on at the three. That's really as far as I really went into it. And then kind of a hot take I have is a lot of coaches you'll talk to before a game can make you nervous, and they'll say, "No, I already did all my job in practice. Now the kids get to play." And I'd be like, I coach a lot during games, and I feel like the people I'm coaching against do as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like I am a little nervous because I got to be on it during game. I got to recognize and get ahead of the game plan
Yeah.
changes. I've got to think one step ahead. I got to think about matchups constantly, and you can't do that without an abundance of film watching. But I do agree with you, and Ken and I talked about it about a month and a half ago that at the lower levels, when you have kids that are seasonal and don't play year round or obsess over the game, you do have to be careful at how much information you're giving them because they're only going to retain a certain percentage. So you can't just completely bombard them with info or they're just going to forget everything.
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes as we're doing scout, I'll kind of just glance around the room and you'll see 4 or 5 guys just completely tuning out. And so 100% what you're saying. But I always tell our staff or the staffs I've been a part of, as coaches, we have to know everything. We have to know this other team inside and out. We don't have to give it all to the players, but there might be a moment in the game where they have a baseline out of bounds coming out of a timeout. Okay, what are they going to run? Because we have to now give that to our players in a matter of 30 seconds. And that can be the difference in a game. Okay, are they going to hop in a press right now? We better understand if they're likely to do that. Is it a last minute play? What have they done in their last couple of games or earlier in the season when this, most teams have 1 or 2 plays that they're going to go to in a specific situation. So, I have a much detailed scout for each team that I keep myself, keep it in my pocket. I can quickly look at it. And that's something I'm trying to teach some of my current assistants. They always look at me like, Coach, how did you know they were going to press? Well, I've watched 7 games of this team and, we've played them now for a few years. I understand what the coach is trying to do. And you're not perfect. You're never going to 100% know it's
Right.
coming. But I think that also shows your players, or you can build confidence in them. Hey,
Yeah.
coach really knows what's going on here. Like if he draws us up in a huddle, like it's probably going to happen. And they kind of can focus on that. So I just think that's part of the job. Like you said, you have to be really particular and intentional about what you give your players, and knowing specifically who your guys are and what they can handle. Some teams are capable of more, like you said, Kettle Moraine. They're on an incredible run and high level basketball. And if they can do more, like more power to them. But I
Right.
don't think you can just throw that at anybody. At some point, that can even have a negative effect. So, yeah, but what you say is 100% accurate. I agree entirely.
Yeah, these podcasts, I usually try to shine a light on the other coaches, but I'm going to toot my own horn for just 1 second. And that one thing I think I did really well, and I stumbled into it, was every halftime coaches are congregating. They're talking about what should we do? What do we think? What do we think? My favorite question I asked that gave me the most results was I'd ask my assistants, what would you do if you were them right now in halftime? What changes are you guys making to stop us? And now I'm going to start brainstorming what I'm going to do to stop those changes and get ahead of it. So, we're killing them inside. We think they're going to start doubling down from a different direction. Let's talk about the skip pass, the reversal pass, and that sort of thing. And I think that's super important to think about, and maybe a role you can give your assistants if you're trying to figure out what can I utilize them for. We're kind of struggling with creativity is have someone that you go, you're the coach of the other team during the game. Start thinking about what you are going to do to stop us or to change up to help me get ahead and take that next step. And I want to get into basketball sicko land here for the second half and talk about analytics and data and scheme. Let's just start with the most general question that every basketball analytics guy wants to talk about, the mid-range game. What are your opinions on it?
Mid-range game. A lot of different thoughts. Obviously, it gets a ton of attention. I don't think every shot is one size fits all. There's definitely times for it. But at the very surface level, for 95% of players, it's an inefficient shot. So the example I always use is, NBA analytics is different from college, different levels of college, high school, etc. But the average 3-point percentage in the NBA is 35%. Good number. So if you take that in terms of points per shot, you're looking at 1.05 anytime you take a three. That's a good number. Anytime you can be above one, that's efficient. If you're not getting to the free throw line or to the basket, the three is the best option for you, especially catch and shoot, corner, whatever. But if you look at the mid-range shot, the best players in the world are shooting that at 40%. We're talking Kevin Durant's, Chris Paul's, Devin Booker's, Kawhi Leonard's, name whoever that's really in tune with that mid-range shot, 40%. So at the best, that's 0.8 points per shot. So it's just not as efficient, and that's just math. That's not us being nerds.
Yeah.
That's not us, trying to change the game. That's just understanding math. Um, so that's kind of the surface level there. Now, different levels are going to be different. At the high school level, you might only have one or two guys that are good 3-point shooters. Well, you're not going to just let anybody shoot threes, and you're not going to be able to just get to the basket at will. So you're probably going to take some mid-range shots, especially with your best players. And at the same time, defenses are thinking analytically as well. They're not going to
Yeah.
just give up threes, or at least they're going to do their best not to. That's why we see so much drop coverage now,
Right.
different schemes there. So essentially they're trying to get you to take mid-range shots. So at some point you're going to have to take them. It doesn't mean
Right.
every time somebody makes one, we have to comment that the mid-range game isn't dead or anything like that. It's definitely still a shot that is going to be taken, but it's also situationally as well. We don't have a shot clock in Wisconsin, so we have really, two end of clock situations. So that's an opportunity to take a mid-range shot where you're looking for a last shot, or if it is the end of a shot clock, you might get into a mid-range shot. That's, an option. Again, late shot, ball screen, come off an attack, pull up, especially with a good player. That's fine. And another thing I always say, and analytics is kind of an overall guide. It's your average possession, what you're trying to do, but at some point you kind of have to throw it out the window. Last 4 or 5 minutes of a game. Now we're talking situational basketball.
Mm-hmm.
If you're up one and there's a minute to go, well, you're going to take any points you can get. So if the ball is in your best player's hands and they can get to a mid-range spot and knock it down, that's huge for you. I mean,
Right.
any points at that situation is big. So for me, most teams probably have 2 or 3 guys, in my opinion, that should be taking mid-range shots, and that's really at any level of basketball. So in the book I wrote a few years back, the Suns were a really good team at the time. They had just lost to the Bucks in the final. They had Chris Paul, Devin Booker, guys that took the mid-range shot. So I thought that was a really good example because those are some of the best mid-range shooters we've ever seen. So of course you're going to have them take mid-range shots, but all of your role players or non-star players, they essentially just shot threes. Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Landry Shamet, different guys that were on that team that helped them get to the finals. They essentially just shot threes if they couldn't get layups in transition. So to me, that was a really good example of kind of the topic here. Your best players are going to have to take mid-range shots, but I don't think that means your role players have to when they're shooting at 20%, especially if you can work to find an open three or something at the basket. And then one more thing about the mid-range shot. There's different elements, I think, that just make it a tougher shot in general. Shooting percentages tend to drop when you're shooting off the dribble, and most mid-range shots are off the dribble. There's an occasional catch and shoot if you're coming off a curl or whatever it might be, but I think more times than not, it's off the dribble, which also kind of makes a decision of, a help defender coming at you. Now it's a shooter drive or pass decision, whatever it might be. So there's more elements in play, and that, is kind of correlated to the percentage that players are shooting out on that percentage. But again, just average possession throughout the season of a game. The 3-point shot is just worth more. And again, that comes after at the rim and getting fouled. But there's a time and place for the mid-range shot. I just think it probably gets too much attention from the media and things like that. For how they view it, it's still going to be a part of basketball. But I think really just for your best players that have proven they can make that, I don't think it's a shot that most players should be training quite a bit. You have to have it in your arsenal if you're taking a pull-up or whatever it might be. But spend your time on things that are more efficient for your team. At the end of the day, most coaches now are, preaching these other things. So hopefully that answers your question. It's definitely, guys are going to take it, but it's probably, after other things, you've exhausted those options.
That definitely answers my question. I like what you said about mid-range game. I think I completely agree with you in that statistically it doesn't make any sense. And I think there's a rare set of skills. I think there's a couple players I've coached that have a decent mid-range game, so I'd be okay with it. But I'm in agreement with you. At some point, you have to acknowledge the numbers, and the numbers say it's not a great shot. So I think that's a really important to understand. And I want to dovetail that into a conversation about offense in general. We have two base offenses, dribble, drive, and motion. Obviously they can branch off into other things like Princeton and things like that. But at the guts of it, really dribble, drive, and motion are the two based offenses. What's your preference and why?
Yeah, so for me, I've morphed more towards the dribble drive. I think ultimately the deciding factor has to be your personnel, who you have. To run dribble drive, you have to have multiple guys that can, break down their defender, get in the paint. But to me, putting pressure on the rim, putting pressure on the paint, is the best thing you can do offensively. I think anytime you can create help or rotations, puts the defense in such a disadvantage. Um, one, you can get to the basket and finish. That's the highest percentage shot. You're likely or more likely to get fouled. There's nothing more efficient than free throws as long as you're making them at a good percentage. Drive and kick basketball is something we preach highly where we're at. We can get, dominoes is a popular term that Ross McMains and other coaches have kind of put into the mainstream. But anytime you can kind of create an advantage and get defenders rotating, I think is really important for your offense. But again, it starts with your personnel. Do you have enough guys that can get by their defenders, attack gaps, handoffs, everything you need to do, wave cuts, whatever it might be. So something we've done, I watched a ton of Sacramento Kings. I watched Stockton Kings, which was their G League team last year when Lindsey Harding was their coach. I thought she was really good in the stuff they were doing. They would go dribble drive, but then really utilize the high post and kind of pinch off of that and do splits and things like that. So we've kind of taken a lot of that where we're at. We have a really good post player and try to get him involved in different spots. So me, dribble drive, but I also tell our guys when things break down, we have to kind of go motion. We have to go screen for one another. We have to cut. We have to fill. We have to play kind of random basketball where we're screening and filling and things like that. So to me, it's always going to be a little bit of a combination. I've tended to more towards dribble drive, but I think motion is extremely hard to guard, especially when you get to the layers of reading opposite and if my guy curls, we pop quick and things like that. It's extremely hard to guard. And there's so many teams like Texas Tech, excuse me, has been really good with their motion where they're just so hard to guard because they have an answer for everything. It's good for keeping everybody involved, player movement. Players like to play that type of style. So there's definitely something to be said for that as well.
I was able to coach dribble drive and motion for a few years, and I thought it was important for me to craft around the players I had. I wasn't one of those guys where it's like, you're going to do my system no matter what. And what I learned from doing both was first off, you have to have really talented guards to do a dribble drive, or otherwise you're just kind of doing playground, selfish basketball stuff. You have to have people who can facilitate and create for other shooters. It's easier to learn. I think the spacing's easier to learn. I think it's simple. Make a wave, take a wave, kick out, keep attacking. I think that's really simple. But I think the ceiling on it is lower than in motion in general. I think motion is harder to teach, but has a much higher ceiling, and that it's really hard to guard if it's done really well. I don't think it's done really well everywhere, which is why it's not completely infallible. But
Right.
it takes a lot of IQ among a high school team to run a talented motion. Like I think of Edgerton, they run an amazing motion, one of the best we see or we saw every single year. And it was highly, highly, highly effective in that their screens were anticipatory. Their ball movement was anticipatory. It was not, I'm going to look around and then make a cut or a screen. It was like, no, this is the machine. And I think that's where you got to get if you're doing motion. And if you can't do that well, I kind of default towards dribble drive because it's easier to teach.
Yeah, that's a tremendous point. I think you're absolutely right. If you can get to that next level, like you said, the motion, it can take you to a different level. I think if you're a little bit less talented, motion can also make you more competitive. It's hard to guard. It really is. I mean, we've lost to a team this year that ran just phenomenal motion. We just couldn't keep up. Dribble drive, again, I actually don't mind defending dribble drive. I think, especially with pack line being so dominant now defensively, really pack it in. If teams aren't making shots, what do you go to offensively? So that's where we try to balance it a little bit. We'll try to spread you out and drive you, but at the same time, we have plenty of motion concepts in as well where, we have to get a post touch here. So we're going to do this action. We got to get guys coming off screen. So we try to blend the two, but, the team we played last night was primarily a dribble drive team. We did the best we could. Just, don't get spread out, keep it tight, keep guys out of the paint and force tough twos. And it worked for us last night. Had to hit more shots. Who knows? The game's maybe a little bit different, but that's kind of the give and take of what you're trying to do in terms of guarding it as well. So I think we see more pack line because of the dribble drive influence that we've seen so heavily in the last however many years. You know, but if you can get in the paint, it opens up so
Yeah,
much for your offense, especially when you're hitting shots.
I completely agree. A couple more kind of quick hitting questions. I'm incredibly anti zone press. I never saw one that I struggled to beat. I don't understand it. I watch a lot of games now because I'm not coaching, and I've yet to see a highly efficient zone press that gets deflections, steals, stop the offense. Usually, what's happening, I would say 95% of the time, it's a 4-on-3 for at least 5 seconds as they recover. Am I crazy for thinking that? Am I accurate or am I somewhere in the middle?
You know, I think you're closer to the side of accurate. I tend to agree. We installed a 2-2-1 this year. We thought it would be good. We've used it and we get nothing out of it. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Like you said, we don't turn it over. Um, we're not passive out of it either. I mean, we're trying to create turnovers, but at least there's so many 2-on-1s on the backside or at the end there, and we give up layups. And to me, that's not worth the risk there. Offensively, we run the same press break against any zone press, um, and we get it in the middle. And for the most part, we're breaking it. Diamond press might give you a little bit of trouble. I think that's probably the best one that we see. But you're right. There's so many 4-on-3s, 3-on-2s advantages that are given up. And some coaches like that. They want you to take the quick shot so they can go back down and try to score. I completely understand that. But I think you're on the side of accurate.
When shot clock is instituted, hopefully one day in Wisconsin, you're going to see a lot more of it. I don't think it will get much better. I think it's too easy to reverse and hit the middle. I think it's too easy to look up and find someone outnumbered deep. There's just there's too much room for error with a zone press, and there's not enough reward for that risk. Man press is so much more effective, and even running traps out of it because it's a pseudo zone if you want to run a trap out of it, which is, I think, getting more deflections, more chaos, and that sort of thing. I have not seen it, and I'm sorry if you're listening and you think you run an awesome zone press. Let me know. I'll watch your games. I have not seen a highly effective one. I think you have to have a lot of length and a lot of athleticism. If you don't have that and you have short guys up front, it's over. It doesn't matter. So I that's where I land. Next question. How much should coaches look at things in the high school realm? Because I know college coaches do look at this a lot. In the high school realm, like points per possession, turnover percentage, plus minus, how much should we be looking at these stats?
Yeah, I think there's value in all of it. I think it's a piece of the puzzle. I think it allows you to ask good questions. It kind of focuses your film watching, focuses your practices, what you can improve on. The one that I get kind of tripped up on in terms of its value is plus minus. There's so many variables that go into it. On the surface, it doesn't tell you a whole lot. The NBA has models where you can do real plus minus, adjusted plus minus, accounts for who's on the floor, the opponent, time and score, is it garbage time, et cetera. That obviously has way more value. That's going to be hard to do at the high school or small college level, unless you just have a ton of help and people that are able to do that for you. But everywhere I've been, we've tracked it. When I was doing analytics for D1 teams and things like that, we always did plus minus. It's a tool, but context is very big there. When I was with UW Milwaukee, we had a player who was top plus minus for us. And when we really started looking at it, well, he was always in against like the second unit.
Mm.
So he was doing a good job, but what does that really tell us? Well, it tells us that he's doing a good job, against the second unit of the other team, or it was dependent on who his teammates were at the time. So it can be skewed. I mean, you might not touch the ball in 3 minutes, but your plus minus is +8. Well, is that because of you, or is that because you just went on a run? And who's getting scored on? Are you -5, but you were locking your defender up? So it's not the best indicator, but I believe highly in points per possession. I think that's the ultimate indicator. 1.0 on offense and defense. If you're above or below offense defensively, you're doing a really good job being efficient. Effective field goal percentage is huge. Are you making enough threes at a high rate? And then turnover percentage, to me, at the high school level, is everything. If you can limit your turnovers while also creating some, I think you win the majority of the time at the high school level. Now, there was a big study done at the college level, probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, when they studied the NCAA tournament. Teams that won effective field goal percentage and turnover percentage won like 95% of the games. So, I
Wow.
mean, it is important to study that stuff. Now, you're not really thinking about that during the game. Well, what's our effective field goal percentage at? We need to get that up. No, but you can go back and use that as a tool. Okay, why isn't high enough? Are we taking bad threes? Are we not taking enough? Whatever it might be. If your turnover percentage on offense is too high, it allows you to ask the questions of why are we turning this over? What are we struggling with? Is our footwork bad? Are we traveling? Are we throwing too many one-hand passes? Whatever it might be, it allows you then to go back and look at that stuff. So that's how I view analytics in general. It's a tool, a starting point, so to speak. From there, you have to do the work. You have to dive in. You have to watch the film. You have to understand the context behind it. You have to understand your players. Were they just in a bad space that night? Maybe that's part of it. But the numbers is kind of the guide or the starting point in my view. And that's how I view and use analytics. It can't be everything. You're never going to coach a game or base your style of play off of numbers. I think that's foolish. But I think it definitely helps with anything you're looking at.
I find it very interesting because Huddle now offers everyone all these numbers. And admittedly, I'd look at them and I'd go, okay, so what? You know what I mean? Like there'd be times where it'd be like, all right, so you're at whatever plus minus, or you have this turnover percentage. There's all sorts of stats on there. And I started thinking about how many high school coaches can actually comprehend this. And I'm not saying that to disparage high school coaches. I do think, though, it's a missing link, though, between the college and the high school level. It's you're paid professional to understand the game and have that be your 9 to 5 versus you get 2 hours a day, you have a family, all those things. So I'm not saying high school coaches are dumb, but I do wonder how many actually utilize those stats and comprehend them. Do you think most can, or do you think it's pretty rare for someone to do it well?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there is an element of time. Do you have enough time to really dive into this? Like you said, we get the Huddle Assist report, right? It
Yeah.
lists, I don't know, 12, 14 stats. Great. You can easily see what you won, what you lost. So I tend to look at the things that we really emphasize as a team. Defensive rebounding percentage is really big for us. Are we cleaning up the boards? We have a tendency to allow offensive rebounds and second chance points. So the stuff we emphasize and practice in our overall scheme and system of play are the things we measure. So we're trying to play fast in transition. How many times are we going to cross half court in 4 seconds or less? How many points in transition are we getting, period? It's easy to say, oh, we're a good transition team, but are the numbers backing that up? Are you efficient enough to play that way? So again, I don't want to disparage high school coaches as well. I think some of it's just lack of time or resources, or someone on staff that really can dive into that. But I think it is a little misunderstood, or maybe not understood enough. An area that coaches could really improve on or study up in the off season, because it's another tool to enhance your team. We use it all the time. We look at 4 or 5 things. We don't go with the whole list. That's too much. But it's definitely things that you can use with your team, and it helps us plan our practices. Okay, we're really getting killed on the boards. Our percentages aren't high enough. Rebounding drill or whatever it might be. Again, looking at our turnovers, looking at our shot selection, the shots we're getting, and that usually derives from the numbers that we're looking at. Because you're watching film. Okay, that's a good shot. That's a bad shot. Numbers will back that up, and then it's really up to you as a coach to use that information to plan your practices, put your strategy in place, and improve your team. So I think, if I can suggest anything to coaches, like take an off season and dive into a little bit. And even if you reject it, that's fine. It can only, enhance your knowledge of the game, and think about how other coaches are thinking. There's so many coaches now that are playing just strictly off of analytics. It will help you defend those teams. What are these teams trying to do? I mean, look at Alabama. They're probably the number one analytic team out there and how they play. And they put up so many points, and they're extremely hard to guard. And more teams are starting to play like that. So if you can understand why they're trying to do that, it can help you on the other side of things as well. So I would just encourage coaches to have an open mind, even if you're not going to, really utilize it yourself, just to have an understanding of it. And maybe you get 1 or 2 things that can help you. I think that's big.
Right. And I struggled with some stats sometimes too, because Huddle would count turnover pretty frequently to the wrong guy. And if you really wanted to do it well, you actually need to put in a lot of time to dissect it. I think my favorite one was the shot chart and seeing shot percentage around the rim, not just the lane, but around the rim, and then 3-point percentage and what spots are we hitting from. Because if we're running a dribble drive offense, I'd like us to be shooting really well from the corners, right? And if we're not, that's alarming. And one of the things I learned coaching for as long as I did was there's levels to this thing. And I thought, as a kid and in college, if you're a varsity coach, you're a genius. You're on another level. You're whatever. Then I realized, just like any profession, there are people who are better than others, and there's levels. So I'd have people that go, "Man, you're really good. Are you going to do X, Y, and Z?" And I'd be like, "Hold on, I have nothing on Craig Haase. I got nothing on Dave Burkhamper." And I realized that, man, and so I'm trying to not say like, man, there's a lot of bad people out there, but there is levels to this. And then I've had a game where I've coached and we're in a box and one, and during the game, when a player on the other team stops with the ball, looks at his coach and goes, "Coach, what are they in?" He goes, "I don't know. It's like a 2-3 zone, but a guy's missing." It like
Right.
literally said that. And I was like,
Right.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So there is levels to this thing, and it's not necessarily 100% skill based, because I do believe that time is a big deal to high school coaches. We have families, we have a job, we have other things going on versus college coaches who high school coaches gets that level probably if they had that 9 to 5 and all that resource and access and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So this isn't me saying like high school coaches stink or they're not able to comprehend. It's more so me going, given what we have,
Yeah.
are we using this correctly? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, huddle, like you might get your report back 24 hours later. By that time in the high school world, I mean, you might be already on to the next. You don't even have time to go back, right? I mean, you have, like you said, you're working your 9 to 5. You have to plan practice. You have to, X, Y, Z. Do you have really the time to go back and digest what these numbers are giving you? Where in college, we would have these reports within an hour of the game. This would be on the head coach's desk, before they left for the night, before they got in the morning. It was the first thing they looked at. So they were able to, spend an hour on that before they dove into that day's practice or preparation for the next team. So there is just a huge element of time. When I was doing analytics for Milwaukee, like I would have that report to the head coaches and the assistant coaches within 45 minutes. They could look at it quickly, digest it, take the key bits, and then, before they even watch the film. So they are kind of already have an idea of where we struggled. Okay, our points per possession was extremely low. Let's look at that, rebounding percentage, whatever it might be, plus minus, you name it. We already have an understanding of who played well, who didn't. We graded our players, which again, and some people are for that, some are not. But it gives you an idea of kind of before you even dive into the tape. So yeah, it's hard at the high school level. It really is. You kind of have to be a nerd or a analytics guy like me. I dive into it right away. I do a lot of it on my own before I even get the huddle stuff, just because I think it helps me, and that's just who I am. But that's not for everybody, and I definitely understand that. But I use it as a competitive edge. It helps my thinking. It helps me in terms of the way I envision the game and view it. So that's why I do it.
Absolutely. Last thing I want to do before you go, you wrote a book, Basketball Analytics 1-on-1 on Amazon. Give us an elevator pitch for what you liked about it, what we could get from it, something like that, a little nugget for us.
Yeah, so it kind of hits on what we were just talking about. The reason I wrote this book is, as I was doing analytics, I would get questions all the time. How do you do this? What does this mean? How do you have time for this? So I kind of compiled this book of everything I've done. I did analytics for 6 or 7 D1 programs, a couple professional teams. Here's what I did. I was one person. This is what I created. This is how long it took me. Here's every formula. Here's every chart I used, because I understand that we do not have the resources at numerous levels of basketball. So that was the idea behind it, to help coaches that maybe feel overwhelmed. Well, I don't have the time to do this. I only have a volunteer coach. I don't have someone who can do this for me. Well, here's some tools, that you can use. Um, some of it's, numbers based, some of it's opinion based. It's just to get you thinking. That's the biggest thing. It gives you ideas of things you can track. We always talk about, if it's important to you, measure it. So if you value getting 3 stops in a row, track it. If you value hockey assists, track it. If you value taking charges, track it. Your players buy into that type of stuff. So it just gives you different things you can kind of think about including. I talk a lot about context in there. When I was with Marquette doing their analytics for a while, they had a guy named Marcus Howard. We did player grades, and he would consistently grade as like a B minus. But if you watched Marquette, like he was the only reason they were in the game or won the game. So it's all context based. Like
Mm.
you have to understand. You still have to go back and watch the film. You still have to have feel for the game. But this is just another tool to have in your toolbox to hopefully help you as a coach, help your team improve. Again, ask the right questions, and hopefully get closer to the answer that we're always chasing of playing, our ideal basketball. So that's kind of why I wrote the book. if anyone listening wants it, I'm not in it for money. It was more a goal and just happy to share. I send it out all the time. Uh, Email me, Andy Fitzgerald 0, the number 0 at gmail.com. I will send you a PDF immediately. Happy to share and always excited when someone wants to talk analytics.
That's really cool. And a plug for you as well. I enjoy following you on Twitter. You have good stuff. Basketball Sickos, you will enjoy it. He does really good stuff. He breaks down the game really well. And if you're like me and you're looking at Huddle and you're going, yes, here's the stat, but it's a great resource. It really is. I think it's really important. Andy, thanks so much for joining. This was a lot of fun.
Hunter, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Love talking basketball. Appreciate what you do. Thanks again for having me.
Awesome. I'll see you all next week.